Hello, and welcome to Message in the Middle with Marianne. We all know that life is hard, right? It's messy, it's unpredictable, but it can be wonderful all at the same time. My hope is that we can take a deep dive into self-development topics and explore life's lessons through book clubs, conversations, and interviews. And together, we can uncover the lessons that others have already learned to help us navigate this crazy, wonderful ride called life. Hello and welcome to Message in the Middle. I'm your host, Marianne, and today I'm bringing you a unique combination of lighthearted comedy coupled with relevant and relatable messages focused on middle age. Joining me for this conversation is Sarah Stenton. Sarah resides in the UK and would likely say she's just like the rest of us. She's a woman in her 50s, menopausal, and says that on a good day she can pass for a happy, confident woman. On a bad day, well, that's another story and one we'll explore shortly. But first, I want to share that Sarah's also a writer, a speaker, a natural comedian, and I'm going to add an educator, and you'll see why as we go on. Sarah's writings are all about trying to fight back against menopause and middle-age madness by using laughter and real-life stories to bring to light the topics that many of us face, but we aren't often talking about. Sarah, thank you for joining me today. I've been looking forward to this since we first talked a few weeks ago.
Thank you for having me, Marianne, and thank you for that lovely introduction. You've set the bar quite high there, so I'll do my best.
Don't sell yourself short. And Sarah's had a rough couple of weeks, guys. She's been a trooper and meeting with me anyway, so we're going to get through this, and I know you guys are going to find value in it. But Sarah, I think to start us out, if you could share a little bit about your background and kind of how you ended up just writing the blog and a book focused on menopause and middle-age madness. I mean, it's not the norm, right? So Tell us a little bit about how you got here.
No, it's definitely not the norm. I started feeling menopausal or perimenopausal in about 2017 when I was probably 47. And there were no advocates for menopause then. It was very sort of hard to understand what was happening to me. And I was still having periods, so I didn't think there was such a thing as the perimenopause. I couldn't believe how angry I felt and how lost I felt at times when I kept losing my memory. I thought I was going mad. So I just started writing a blog on Facebook. And I think because I was so angry, it came across quite funny, which wasn't really intending it to. But actually, I found that really therapeutic and helpful. And the comments I was getting back, and the more sort of angry and outraged I became, the funnier I became. I'm sure a lot of people probably thought I was making things up. And I might embellish a little bit, but the things that have happened that I've written about in my book actually all did happen. There's nothing funnier than the truth, I find. So I just started doing it. I come from a lovely background. My parents are still together, very happily married. I'm happily married. It didn't feel like I had any reason to be so cross and angry and outraged, but I couldn't help it. And I've learned to channel it now into sort of ranting about the menopause, but trying to flip it round to make it so that we don't have to be so hard on ourselves and that it's okay to not be okay, to quote that often used phrase. We need to give ourselves a break because the menopause is really tough. And I think we're far too hard on ourselves, expecting to maintain a perfect figure, to keep our youthful glow on our skin, when actually all we're doing is aging, which is completely normal and totally acceptable. So that's why I started doing it. And I'm amazed at how well it's taken off. I'm delighted. And we've created a really lovely community on my page where it's very supportive and the women help each other if anyone's got a problem or an issue. It's a safe place where women and men can learn about the menopause, but also learn that it's okay to laugh at it. You don't have to beat yourself up for putting a few pounds on or having grey hair or whatever. That's what we're trying to do anyway. Hopefully it works.
I think it's working tremendously. I just want to add, for me, one of the things that I've flipped the script for myself is It's also a gift for us to be
Mm,
aging.
totally.
I mean, I look around and I'm 55 and I hate to say it, but there's people that I went to school with that are no longer here,
Yeah.
right? And I think what a gift. I have two small grandchildren and I'm getting to watch them grow up and be very prevalent in their life. And that is a gift. So I think, the things you talk about that I think most of us can relate to and that most people don't talk about, like, I'm just going to throw out a couple things just so people can get an
Oh
idea.
no.
Well, I mean, it's not uncommon for you to talk about chin hairs, hair thinning,
Oh no.
leaking
Yeah.
bladders,
Yeah.
unexpected farting. I mean, that's the kind of stuff you talk about. But guess
That's
what?
just an average day in my
Yeah,
house,
yes. But that's the
I'm
thing, right?
afraid.
I
Yeah.
think, Sarah, that's the thing. That's the key. It's an average day in all of our
Yeah, it is.
houses,
It's
right?
completely normal, and I think it's really hard on women that we do have this expectation, thanks to the media. I've got to say, I mean, I don't know what it's like in the States, but over here, if a middle-aged woman puts on a few pounds or just is pictured out shopping, without a full face of makeup or a hair done beautifully, it's so passive aggressive towards her. And I find that appalling because, they don't do it to men. You don't see snarky comments about men on the beach with their bellies hanging out or their grey hair. It's almost as if women aren't allowed to age
Yeah.
because then it's equates to letting themselves go. And I'm very, very opposed to that imagery being used. And I don't think there are celebrities out there that help the cause because they could clearly, obviously, have had quite a lot of work done. It must be hard working in that environment and feeling that pressure towards be youthful. But why don't they embrace what they've got and use that as
Yeah.
a way to empower the rest of us? So yes, it's completely normal to have chin hair stubble, leaky bladder. I wish I didn't fart as much as I do, but I do. So, I don't know why. I'm no doctor. I don't know if that's a menopausal side effect, but I'm living with it. So we just have to go with it. All of it really. It's very, very hard to be a working woman, a mother, a grandmother, whatever, and to have to live with how you feel when you feel you don't meet up to what society expects you to look like. If you feel that you've gained weight, which I have, I mean, in the menopause, I've gone up 3 dress sizes, and that was really hard to get my head around. I felt as if I'd let myself go. I was angry at myself for not having the motivation to exercise more and watch what I was eating. But I lost a lot of motivation. But that's completely normal. There are so many of us who feel like that. And I think if your listeners look around next time they're going out shopping or whatever, they'll see far more people with a body shape similar to them than they will, a perfect size 10 or whatever that we're sort of made to see in the media. So
Yeah. I love that message because I just interviewed somebody. It's a doctor and she does a podcast called Thrive Beyond Size. And the whole message was that it's not a given that we're unhealthy just because we're in a little bit of a bigger body. And
yeah,
we need to start getting comfortable with working on the whole parts of ourselves that we
absolutely.
want to work on, but not being obsessed over the number on the scale or the size of our body. We're spending these short years worrying about things like that. And it's just really not worth the time, I don't think.
It really isn't. I think as well, we are our own worst critic. So I will judge myself far more harshly than I know anybody else does.
Yeah.
It's that little voice in your head, isn't it?
Yes.
I did a post, probably this time last year. I was on holiday and I was feeling very self-conscious in my swimming costume. Of course, you look around and there's hundreds of, lovely, supple, slim young ladies. Um, but there was a lady in front of me who was, she was a bit bigger than me, but she sat there almost fully clothed on the beach, and her children were begging her to go in the sea and play with them. And she kept saying, "No, I'm fine here. I'm fine here." She was very, very careful about sitting down in the chair. You could see she was worried about breaking it. And in the end, she spent the whole day just sort of watching them and saying no. And they stopped asking after a while. it obviously wasn't the first
Yeah.
time it happened. And my heart broke for her because I think we've all been that woman who
Hmm.
won't take the sarong off or the oversized shirt off because we don't want people to look and judge. But actually, I wouldn't have looked at her and been judgy. I was willing her to get off the chair and go and play with her kids in the sea because they would have that memory. And they,
Yes.
now when they think back to that day, that lovely day they spent at the beach, they're not going to remember their mum was even there, and that broke my heart. So
Yeah.
it made me I whipped my sarong off and I ran down to the beach and I just danced in the surf because I thought, no, I'm doing it for her as well as me.
Yeah.
I felt so sad for her.
I just love that message as well. And that's a lesson I learned, I would say a little too late. I look back at all the pictures with my kids, and my girls are grown now, and I'm not in most
Mm-hmm.
of them, right? And I was always a very heavy person. I've lost quite a bit of weight, but I was always pretty heavy, and I didn't want to be in the
Mm-hmm.
pictures. And I am not making that mistake this time around with my grandkids. I'm in
Good.
those pictures every time I get a chance because likely I won't be around when they grow up. I mean, that's the
Yeah.
reality of life, right? When they're grown.
Yeah.
So I am making sure that I take the pictures. And I think it's such a good message because we just spend so many years worrying about the silly stuff that in the end,
Absolutely.
it just doesn't matter.
It genuinely doesn't matter. And I know that for a fact because, as you mentioned, I've had a bit of a difficult week or so. We lost my uncle, who I loved very much, a week ago today. So my parents have come down from Edinburgh, and we're sorting through photographs to use at his funeral. And, at times he was overweight. I think he would have been the first to say. But I don't look at the photographs and think, oh, well, he looked a bit fat in that picture, or oh gosh, what's this? That's not very flattering. I'm thinking, oh my God, that's such a nice photograph of my uncle smiling
Yeah.
or laughing.
Yeah.
And that's what we leave behind. I know it's a bit of a morbid message, but it's the truth. We're only here once. Let's not spend this precious time complaining because our backsides are a bit bigger than we think they should be, or because we've got flabby arms or whatever. Wear the bright colours, wear the lovely swimwear, get in the sea, get in the pictures, and just smile and laugh because that's what you'll be remembered by ultimately, and people aren't going to look at pictures and say, oh, why did she wear that? That's really unflattering. They're going to say, oh, she's laughing her head off. That's an amazing photograph. Let's use that. So that's what I'm trying to do with my page. It's sort of morphed into a body positivity page, but as well, I do try and inject a lot of humor because I know if I'm feeling it and thinking it, then I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one. And that's the message I try and get out there to ladies, to reassure them, and men actually, to reassure them that, they're not the only one with a wife that's suddenly gone a bit cuckoo. It's not her, it's all of us. And that helps enormously. I've had messages from people saying, I was thinking of leaving my husband. And then I read a post and we started laughing about it together, and it starts a conversation. So sometimes I think they use my words when
Yeah.
they don't want to say the words themselves. So, and that's been amazing. That's something I never imagined happened. So I'm so very proud of that.
You should be proud. And when I was giggling, I was thinking about, I don't know if it was a post or something on the website or whatever, but you had something that said, I'm paraphrasing, of course, but the messaging was, one minute you are in love with your husband and you want to get in the bedroom, and the next minute you want to rip his head off. And I'm thinking,
Absolutely, yeah.
what woman doesn't feel that, especially if you've been married for a long time, right?
Yeah, no, we all
Yeah.
do. I know. I actually did I'm just going through my book here because I was trying to sort of jog my memory. And I did a letter, and it's called Dear Beloved, and it's written from a menopausal woman. And it's something you can leave lying around for your other half. And it just goes through the whole range of emotions. And it says, I know I'm not the woman you married, but I'm still in there, keep loving me. But it does list in quite a humorous way all the emotions and the physical changes that, that we go through. It does say it might appear that at times I actually dislike you, but don't take it personally. I hate everybody. It's things like that. So I do love you very much. And, I'm very sorry that sometimes you're the target of my anger. Because I see my husband at times looking at me as if to say, why on earth
Yeah.
is she, going off now? What
Yeah.
have I said? What have I done? And actually, it can be just something as silly as him chewing loudly
Yes.
that I just think, oh my God, irritating. It's like he's doing it on purpose. But
Yes.
it's not, of course. It's just that everything feels magnified, doesn't it, when you're in one of those moods and moments.
Absolutely. I want to get into your Meno tours that you're doing because I'm laughing and I'm expecting that this is sort of the conversation that you have at those events because I can so relate to that. And I will say I got better at noticing it and then being able to say to my husband, oops, that was kind of just me. You know what I mean? Like, so, you start to learn yourself and realize
Yeah.
I just went off the deep end for like no reason at all. But
Yeah, I know. And it's quite funny when it happens, I think. And sometimes I do quite enjoy losing my temper. If I'm driving, and we've all had it when somebody's too close to you when you're driving, I just, I'm quite good at sign language at that times. I think we all know the signs. So I do think if you can channel that rage, I mean, we'd rule the world, I think, wouldn't we, women? We'd be amazing. It would be incredible. But yeah,
absolutely.
get the tours are that's something that sort of I wasn't envisaging I would do it, but lots of people were saying, you should, I wish you'd come out and talk to us face to face. So I tried it locally first and it went really well. I was a bag of nerves, but actually once people started coming through the door and I was chatting to them one to one, we're all the same, there's we're all in exactly the same leaky boat together.
Yeah.
And if I can give them an evening of laughter, then I'm pleased that I can, take their minds off it for an evening. So it's lovely. I've been getting out and about all over the UK. I'm just trying to book some more in actually. And again, that's turned into something quite unexpected because something magical happens when women come together to support each other and to have a really good night of laughter. I mean, I think we are probably a lot louder and more open and honest than a group of men. And you can see people, they come in as strangers and they leave as friends. They start talking to the ladies on the table next to them. They start telling them about their experiences and how, because I think they're thinking, well, if she's up there on the stage talking about her, hairy flats or whatever, then it's okay for me to talk about it. So you can just see this weight lifting off women, a collective weight just lifts off them as you can almost see it that halfway through the show, they just say, oh my God, I'm normal, and it's an amazing thing to see. And it's lovely to see them laughing at things that perhaps they previously felt pretty uncomfortable about. The leaking bladder, the pelvic floor failing. It happens to a lot of women. It's nothing to be ashamed about. And I just sort of, I want to say I embrace it. I wish I didn't have it, but I have. So I try and make it funny, and have a giggle about it. And you can see that, like I say, halfway through the show, you can see the women going, oh God, I'm so pleased I came. I totally get that I'm not alone anymore. And that is incredible to witness. It's a huge privilege to be part of it.
That's the gift for sure, to get that kind of messaging and know that you've validated someone so that they can feel
Yeah.
less alone, for sure.
Yes.
I was going to ask you about pushing past the nerves and the imposter syndrome and just doing the thing. I just posted about that this morning, and I don't imagine you saw yourself as a comedian when you were a kid. I mean, did you expect to do
No,
right?
not at all.
So you didn't expect to do this.
No.
You're doing this, and you mentioned that you were a bag of nerves, but you're doing it anyway. So talk to us about that, because I feel like that's a great message for women I guess it could be men too, in their middle age, because trying new things, I think, is something that sort of lights us up and gives us new life. And I think many of us are afraid to step out of our comfort zone.
I agree with you completely. And for the last 16 years, I've had my own business as an estate agent or real estate with my husband. And it was his dream. So I sort of supported it and had a very much administrative role that I did not like. He was doing the job he loved and I was enabling it, but I didn't enjoy it at all. It wasn't a good use of my skills. I didn't know what my skills were, but when I started Facebook page and that took off, it became apparent that I mean, I've always liked writing, so that was a nice outlet for me to be able to get my words out there. And it just became apparent the more I did it, the more I wanted to do it. And so we had a conversation. We sold our business recently, and that's why I've now got time to get out there and do these shows face to face. Yes, it's terrifying, and yes, you do have imposter syndrome. I've tried to start small because I don't want to feel overwhelmed. And I love getting round after I've done my stand-up bit. I love going around and chatting to the ladies afterwards just to see if there's got any more stories I can pinch and pass off as my own at the next show. But no, it's just lovely to first of all to get their feedback, but also to talk to them. So that side of things I never feel nervous about. I love it. It's the standing up and basically telling my menopause life story, because you never know if people are going to be shocked and horrified if they don't follow the page, because there is some language in it, or whether they're just going to laugh. I did one show where a lady constantly, she almost took it as if it was a question and answer session just between me and her. So she was constantly saying, oh yes, I have that and I've done this. So it sort of was really hard to keep my flow going. On the way to shows when I'm driving there, I am terrified. I'm thinking, why don't I just go back and get a proper job? What am I doing this for? But the minute ladies start walking through the door, and my policy is that it's names at the door, so I'm standing there greeting them when they come in, which gives me something to do besides being terrified.
Yeah.
So I'm recognizing the names because I've seen them on Facebook over the years. So that's lovely to put a face to the name and just have a quick chat with them, and that helps enormously.
Yeah.
And then by the time I'm ready to start talking, I feel like I've had a quick chat with them all everywhere anyway. And it feels like they're friends, so it does feel more relaxed. Perhaps if I was walking into a room of strangers and never spoken a word to them before. So how people go on who do these massive shows, I haven't got a clue who's in the audience. I couldn't tell you. So this way works for me, and I'm very happy to carry on doing it like that. But yeah, I just try and tell myself it's going to be okay. And if it is a disaster, well, it's just one night. But so far, touch wood, every show's been fabulous, really good. I've really enjoyed it, and I've taken away more than I've given, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. And I like it's just one night, because I think one of the tools that I've employed is really having myself go down the rabbit hole of what's the worst thing that can happen. And when you really do it, the worst thing is not really, it's usually nothing big, right? We imagine these crazy things, but if you really quiz yourself on that, like, really, are the wheels going to fall off the car or blah, blah, you just, whatever it is, right? And it's typically not the worst case. So to your point, it's one night, you might not get a bunch of laughs, and so be it. That would be it. That would be the worst. Yeah. So I think that's a good tool for folks to just talk themselves through what's the worst.
It's never too late if you've got a dream. Yes. I'm 53 this year. Did I think I'd be going around doing stand-up comedy tours? No, frankly, I didn't. I didn't even dream it. It wasn't even something I thought I wanted until I got so far down the line with my page that I felt I had to progress it in a different direction. I'd done the books and they'd gone very well. And it just felt like the next step was, let's get out there and speak to people. It's never too late. If you have got a dream or a calling even, I'd say this feels more of a calling. It's something I don't think I can switch off.
Yes.
I don't think I can not do it now, even if I wanted to. It feels like, no, this is where I'm supposed to be. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. This is what the universe wanted for me to do. And that's a very powerful feeling, and that does drive me. It might sound like a lot of nonsense to some people. It depends whether you believe in all that or whether you're spiritual. I didn't feel fulfilled prior when I was in my own business. I sort of felt as if the wheels were just turning and I was part of it, but it didn't fulfill me in any way. Whereas now I just absolutely love what I do. It's an amazing feeling to be able to go out there and make people laugh. And also, like I say, to give them that realization and that light bulb moment that, oh, wow, it's not just me. I'm going to be okay. I'm going to get through this. It's a real privilege, actually, to be able to do that. Yeah. So, I feel proud of myself for giving it a go. And say anybody listening who's in a dead-end job, or they're not using the skills, or they've got an ambition, just do it. What's the worst that can happen? If you don't do it, you'll never know.
Yeah.
And you can't regret things.
Right. And I think it's important to know, sometimes you have to stay in the job because of financial whatever.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's okay. Find a way to do it on the side. Find a way,
Yeah.
find an outlet to grow that thing you're thinking about. I think it's also worth noting because we both talked about doing it anyway, push past it, find those outlets that you enjoy. It doesn't mean it's always going to be easy. Right.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that you won't come up to obstacles or you won't want to throw your hands in the air sometimes. That does happen. That's real life. Like you still have real life in front of you. But most of the time, it fills you up more than it takes away from you. I think that's the important part.
Absolutely. I mean, I was running my Facebook page and writing my books for 5 years before we sold the business. And, obviously times are tough for a lot of businesses. So we haven't had enough out of it for either of us to be able to sort of sit back and retire.
Yeah.
So I've gone straight into this, into booking this, and my husband's got himself a part-time job. Um, so it's not that we're in a fantastic financial position. I've got bills and mortgage to pay just like everybody else, but I'm very, very lucky that this is now making me a little bit of
Yeah.
money and I can do it, and I'm so glad. But if it hadn't worked out, then I would have just said, right, okay, I gave it a go. That's that itch scratched. I'll have to down tools and go and, get a job somewhere else. I was fully prepared to do that. But actually, as it happened, it touch wood, it is working out and it does seem to be going very well. And it's sort of each show is a bit bigger than the one before. So that's really encouraging me to sort of keep getting things booked in, booking events in and perhaps going a bit further afield to Northern Ireland and Southern Ireland, hopefully later this year. So yeah, it's you've got to go for it, I think. And if you don't, then you've only got yourself to blame if you're full of regrets later. The worst that can happen is that it doesn't work
Yeah.
out and you have to get another dead end boring job. But if you were doing that anyway, you've lost nothing, have you? You've just
Absolutely.
given it a go, and you never know. It might work out. You might end up living your dream, which is how I feel at the
Yeah.
moment.
And lucky to do that, right? Because that's, not everybody gets a
Oh,
chance to do
absolutely.
that, but you had to take the step. I want to ask you, what surprises you the most? So 5 or 6 years, you've been kind of in this space now, kind of making fun of menopause, but also I added educator because I do think to your point about enlightening men and also validating women. I think you do some education along the way in a funny way. But what surprises you the most? What things that you hear or see or in the community? I mean, what would you not have expected?
The thing that surprises me the most is how alone women feel. I didn't expect that. Although I felt it myself, I quickly found that talking about it negated it. But there are still so many women in this day and age who don't feel good enough, who feel alone, who feel they can't talk to their partners, who feel ashamed of themselves. So that surprises me, and my heart breaks for them. It's like I say, women that would rather leave their husbands or their husbands have an affair than explain to their husband why they've gone off sex. That's a natural, normal part of menopause and it can be overcome. So that surprises me that we're still quite rude, I think, when it comes to women's health, especially sexual health. I'm constantly surprised that women still feel ashamed of themselves for putting weight on and for not being who they used to be. So that surprises me, and that's the message I'm trying to get out there and change, that it's completely natural and normal, we become real the more loved and worn and aged we are. It's like when you have a favorite teddy, isn't it? You don't love it any less just because it's a bit saggy and a bit bruised and battered or whatever. You cherish it and love it more. I think what I'm trying to say is, as we age, and it's a natural process, you do find acceptance in that. And when you find that, and when you are okay with yourself and what's happening to you, you can take on the world. And it's very empowering, and it's lovely to be able to help other women and men understand. But yeah, I get frequently surprised by low self-esteem, I think. I find it heartbreaking that people feel suicidal sometimes, because depression is a very real part of the menopause. I mean, I take antidepressants myself and I'm a big advocate for talking about it. Don't sweep it under the carpet. Don't be ashamed of yourself. It's It's completely normal and natural as your hormones leave and flee your body for your brain to have some sort of chemical meltdown. It's completely normal. But again, I'm frequently surprised by how ashamed women are that they feel they're not coping. And that saddens me as well as surprises me. And I wish I could do something about that. I wish I could change that mindset.
Well, I think you are, right? I think
Trying to.
you are. And I think there's a lot more to your point. When you first started this, nobody was talking about it. Even the big names out there, they're
Oh
all
yeah.
still getting dolled up. And now we are starting to see some of that change, not quickly by any means, but we are starting to see some of these famous actresses not wear their makeup or, not get all dolled up. We're starting to hear a lot more women's health doctors out there talking about menopause. Again, it's not saturated. We're not seeing it as we would everything else, but at least it's starting to pop up. It's
It
something,
is.
and
The,
so the
the
progression
tide is
is
turning.
good to see. Yeah, yeah. I do think the tide is turning, and I think that's a positive thing. And you're part of that. You're a big part of
Oh,
that.
thank
So
you.
you should be proud of that.
Just remember something else that was very surprising. I was talking to a lady the other day at one of the shows I did in Wales, and she'd said to her female doctor, I think I'm menopausal. And the female doctor turned around to her and said, well, you can't be because we're the same age and I'm not menopausal yet. Now that's staggering.
Yeah.
And it's so annoying that we still have to fight so hard. We know our bodies
Yes.
and if something doesn't feel right, and you also know if it's starting to change, and there's a list of symptoms as long as your arm that we're becoming more and more aware of. So it surprises me that we still have to fight so hard to get help and assistance to get through the menopause. That's a concern. I can't do a lot about that, but I'll keep banging the drum for that.
Well, it's valid. I actually did a couple episodes a few weeks back with doctors on the topic of menopause. And admittedly, that is something that happens, that most doctors are not trained on it. Most doctors still kind of, we say poo poo, kind of, just shut people
Absolutely.
down when they're trying to talk about those type of problems. And the ultimate message is, if it doesn't feel right, if your doctor's not listening and gaslighting you, get another doctor. Don't put up for that. That is not okay. And whatever you're feeling or thinking or think is
Yes.
going on and you need help with that, then you need to get someone that will listen and work with you. I think that's an important message for people. And I mean, that's how it is here. I don't know about there with doctors, but
No, it's difficult here. The health service is in a bit of a state, unfortunately, but it's hard sometimes to advocate for yourself if you don't feel well,
yeah,
if your mind is fuzzy
yeah,
or foggy, which can happen with menopause, and if you just feel exhausted and tired and you're not sleeping and you're anxious, all those horrible symptoms and feelings that we have, it's really hard to think you're actually worth
yes,
fighting for. So that's something I'd love to see change. That if a woman goes to her doctor or the nurse and says, I think I'm menopausal, she's not fobbed off. She's taken seriously, and they try and understand, because unfortunately we do lose too many women who, do end their lives because of depression. And an awful lot of them are, our sort of age where they haven't had the help and the counselling and the support
yeah,
that they deserve because they didn't feel that they
yeah,
were worth it enough to ask for it. So that's something I would love to see change. If you do go to a health professional and say, I'm feeling low, I think it's because of the menopause, rather than just stick you on antidepressants, say actually investigate what's causing your feelings. And if it can be a balance of
yeah.
HRT and a mild antidepressant, great, so be it. And you can sort of get that I feel like me again feeling. That's what I would love to see happen.
Well, and I want to just reiterate one of the tips that one of those doctors gave. Often when we go into the doctor's office, we either get nervous, we forget what we want to talk
Mm,
about, or we can't remember all the questions. And it seems obvious, but her tip was write it down. Have a
yeah,
list when you go in there and have a prioritized list, not 3 pages, keep it a page long, she said, but have a list of the things you want to touch on and make sure you're ready and say to the doctor, at least, I want to talk about at least these top 3 or whatever. It helps you facilitate if you're nervous about bringing it up, because some of these things you make fun of or joke about, some people are shy about, right?
of
So
course, yeah,
if you don't
absolutely.
want to talk about your leaking bladder, then maybe putting
No,
it on a piece of paper helps you tell the doctor about the
yes.
story. So I think that's worth reiterating to people in case they're in that
Yeah, it's a
position.
very good
Yeah.
point. Yeah. I've had people take in something I've written on Facebook, have taken it into the doctor, because although I've
Yeah.
written it in a humorous way, it lists the symptoms that they're experiencing, and they've sort of said, this is how I feel, or they've shown it to their husband and said, this is how I feel. So that, it's, if you need to use somebody else's words instead of your own, feel free, take mine in, whatever, just get the help that you deserve, because you do deserve it. You absolutely are worth helping.
Yeah, 100%. Well, as we wrap up, first, I want to thank you for taking the time to talk to me and remind folks that we will put the link to your blog and your Facebook page out on the show notes. And we'll also put the link to your website that has the link to the book, which is Middle Age Madness. And it can be bought anywhere books are sold, and Amazon and all those things.
Yes, that's right.
I'm going to put you on the spot. Is there one of your poems, one of your funny poems that you could read to the audience just to give them a little taste of what your style is like?
I can. So when I first started feeling very anxious and stressed and, insomnia and all the rest of it, I thought I'd try yoga, but I hadn't factored in that my pelvic floor and yoga weren't perhaps going to be best friends. So I did write a poem about it. So this one's called Yoga. Lycra straining across my ass, I'm off to enjoy a yoga class. Opposite the mirror on the mat, trying to suck in my rolls of fat. Bending, stretching, squatting a bit, looking like I need to shit. Standing tall, then swooping low, a trickle of wee begins to flow. The piddle is stopped in its track as a blast of air escapes my crack. I glare at the man next to me, who is trying to ignore the smell of pee, hoping the others might just think it was him who made the ghastly stink. Downward dog is our next pose. The man beside me holds his nose. My bum is high, the lycra is tight. I'm holding one in with all my might. Relax, says the teacher. De-stress your head, but all I feel is a sense of dread. If I drift off just enough, out will come a volcanic fluff. Is yoga still a graceful art if I rip out a massive fart? So that's that one.
I just love that.
Yeah, well, there's a whole book full of them, but yeah, it's I was, again, it's all true. It's embellished a little bit, but it's true. That did happen. And, I thought, well, I'm going to have to write about it. And then obviously people are like, oh my God, that's happened to me.
Yes.
I thought I was the only one. So it's nice that you can find humor in sometimes awkward situations and make people laugh. I think my embarrassment filter has dropped off the face of the earth along with my pelvic floor, to be perfectly honest with you. But
well, I love
that. Mind. Thank you.
Thank you for losing your filter, because I think it's helping everybody else. So taking one for the team, Sarah Stenton. Thanks so much for joining me today. This has been great.
Thank you. Thank you, Marianne. It's been my pleasure. Take care.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Message in the Middle with Marianne. If you enjoyed the podcast, please take a minute to share it and write a review, as it helps bring new listeners to our audience. If you'd like to keep the conversation going between episodes, please join us at Facebook group Message in the Middle with Marianne.